Are you confused about writing? Do you not know where to start or even how to finish? Do you love writing so much that it burns deep in your soul, but you still don't know how to meet your goals? Are you looking for a little inspiration that will take you on a writer's vacation? Then let us all write together. Let us all write our way. Hello everyone, welcome to Write Our Way. I'm your host Patrick Starks, and today we are going to talk about reading. I felt we could take a break from talking about the writing, hence the name Write Our Way, but I think we need to dive more into reading and why it's so important as a writer. You know, it's been told time and time again, a lot of writers will tell you that in order to get good with writing, you have to write. You have to write a lot, in fact. However, what they don't mention a lot, or what's not mentioned a lot, is that reading also plays a huge part in this journey of growth for you as a writer. Now, of course, I've talked about this in previous podcasts, but I think I need to dive a little bit deeper. I have not given you guys the really fine detail of what I look for in when I'm reading as a writer, and what I'm looking for in those stories or books that I feel that will benefit me and strengthen my writing for my own stories. Hands down, one of the first things I can think of that a lot of writers face, a lot of writers just starting, is pacing of their story, just finding that pace. And usually to find a good rhythm of your stories, it's going to take you to read others' stories who have their stories, complete, fine-tuned, it's been edited, so you can see that rhythm and you can see that sentence structure. And just going off the sentence structure, that's mainly what I look for when I am reading stories. I not only read the stories just for the entertainment, but I also read it for just to study how sentences are put together, how the punchlines come in, how characters are introduced, or how environments are described. There's a lot of things that go on within these sentences and paragraphs that will take you to have to read them a lot in order to get a grasp of how to interpret those into your own stories. But this is all easier said than done, right? A lot of times when we're thinking about sentence structures and how we're describing things, we have to also be careful about how we are repeating things. I know I have been notorious for repeating these same words over and over again. I believe I talked about that in the last podcast or the podcast before it, which I was talking about, using certain words like nevertheless. That was one of the biggest things that I used when I was a beginning writer, was using that more times than what was needed. And even me going throughout my own stories, I realized how annoying that can be. And really, when we're thinking about writing our stories, we just have to have a conscious and just think about, are we repeating the same thing over and over? And I think that's probably one of the most difficult things as a writer, is going from chapter to chapter and making sure you're not repeating the words too many times. It's okay to repeat words. I'm not saying you can't repeat words. I'm just saying that if it's very repetitive for each chapter, you could have 20 chapters or more in a novel. Imagine saying nevertheless 10 times in each chapter. People are going to be like, what the heck, is this all the vocabulary this person has? So, and this is where I'm talking about, this is what I'm talking about as far as reading. This is where reading comes into play, because reading will kind of give you more vocabulary till you get to see different words that you might have never used in your stories, words that you might get introduced to. You're like, oh, that's interesting. That's a new word. I might use that for my next story or whatnot, and you, as writers, again, I always say we have to be researchers too. Whatever words that you don't understand, or words that you see that you come across that you've never, used before, or even heard used in a sentence, highlight it, look it up, go to Google, figure out the definition for it. And if what that word defines as is something that you like, then, try using that in one of your stories once in a while. And everyone, it's no secret when, people say the saying, reading is fundamental. I mean, it really is something that not will only benefit you with your writing, but also just in everyday life. It just gives you a different scope on how you communicate with people and how you see everyday life discussions and how you interpret them and how you listen, basically. As one of the guys, actually, D.L. Hughley made a good point about the fundamental part. He said reading is fundamental, fun to mental, which I thought was an interesting take on that, which is pretty cool, because he's saying how reading is fun to the people who want to learn. I think that's what he was kind of going off of, fun to mental. So if you're somebody who really wants to learn and really wants to dive into writing and be the best you can be, it's not about being better than anybody else. It's about being the best you can be, reaching the best of your abilities. If you really want to reach that, you definitely need to study all aspects of writing. And one of those biggest parts is reading. You might not be a reader, but I encourage you to start reading. I can't stress enough how beneficial it will be for you as a writer. Like I've talked about before as well, especially if you have a particular author that you like to read already, there will be a time, especially when you're first starting off as a writer, you will kind of write like them, you'll sound like them, but be patient. I promise you that'll fade. Over time, you will begin to develop your own voice, and that's kind of the point at the end, is to eventually be able to take a step away from the books a little bit and really focus on your own writing, because now you have so much knowledge that you've obtained from those books that you can kind of find your own way of how you write. Again, hence the name of the podcast, Write Our Way. And that's what it's all about. It's all about writing your own way, finding your voice. And the only way to do that is just study, everyone. I can't stress it enough. Again, we have to be researchers as writers. I have to remind myself that sometimes too, because sometimes I'll get lazy. I know life gets busy, and sometimes you just don't have time for reading, and you push the reading aside and the books start collecting dust, and all you do is focus on your writing. But isn't it interesting, when you start taking a step away from your reading, you start to lose a little motivation for your writing. Not meaning that you lose the motivation to write, but you lose the motivation of your creativity. You lose the motivation to really think about how you want to describe scenes and how you want to introduce characters, or how many characters you want to have, and who should be the supporting character. You kind of lose your creativity, you kind of lose that child within, and we don't want to lose that. That's again what I'm talking about. As the motto goes, become a child again. Imagine, my friend. We need that child within to keep that creativity, and the only way to keep that child within us is curiosity. We have to be curious. We have to do our research. We all know as children, we've always been curious. As children, we dove into a lot of things as kids. Like, we would learn one thing and then we'd be curious about another thing. I think that tends to get wiped away at some point as we become adults. And again, it's a yin and yang balance that I've talked about before. I think I'm not saying disregard your adult side. I think the adult side helps keep the child in check, because sometimes the child can be too curious where they're not focused on the actual goal at hand. And I think the adult side of you is what has you focus on the goals and prioritize in a way where it's beneficial to you, so you can reach wherever you're trying to reach in life. So again, easier said than done. I know it takes practice, guys. Like I said, it's not something that I would say you can learn overnight. It's something that I still work on. It's a discipline. It's a thing that you have to continuously keep hammering at every day, and checking in with yourself and make sure you have that balance between both. You really can't do one without the other. If you lose one, then it throws your whole focus off of what you're trying to achieve in life. And so, again, I hope this discussion has been beneficial to you guys. There's so much more that we could go about talking about when it comes to reading. I think if there's one more thing that I would want to add to this discussion, I would say don't be too hard on yourself. When it comes to this reading, just, read a page a day, read a chapter a day, whatever you're comfortable with, just as long as you're reading something that gives you a visual sight of like how things are structured in stories and how things are being conveyed in the story. It means everything for you as a writer. And so again, I would just say, don't be hard on yourself. I'm not expecting anyone or even myself to bust out a book in a day. We've heard about some people like Bill Gates and them reading so many books in a day. But like one guy said, I forgot his name, and me and my brother were just discussing this last night. And it's kind of like we got to get out of this whole like hustle mentality, this hustle grind thing that's been going on, these memes going on, because there's one thing to work hard every day and put in all this time and effort, but it's not about how much time you put in and how much you're working. It's about how efficient you are during that time. How much knowledge are you absorbing through that time? One person could absorb, way more than another within an hour versus them, working a whole day. It really comes down to like how much you can contain and absorb yourself. That's why, again, we're all so unique in different ways. Our fingerprints are uniquely different. It's not rocket science. So I would say definitely don't feel rushed, like you got to grind it out every day. Just be patient with the journey, be patient with the process, and you will for surely get there. It's kind of like when I think about when, the Bruce Lee saying where Bruce Lee says he fears the man who has practiced the same kick 1,000 times versus the man who has practiced a whole bunch of kicks, a dozen kicks. I'm not sure if I'm phrasing that right, but I know it's somewhere in that ballpark. But it's so true. It's like it's all about consistency and having the discipline to focus on one thing and really sharpen the tool of it. And so if you want to be a better writer, you have to sharpen that knowledge of how you write and how stories are conveyed. And then once you have that, then you can start having some fun. Then you can start playing around with it and figuring out, or not figuring out, but yet finding your voice, writing your way, writing our way. And it's just such a huge thing as a writer to understand. And I just think it hasn't been discussed much within the writing community, and it was something that I wanted to talk with you guys about. Again, I hope it's been beneficial for you in this episode. And again, you guys all know I love you, and I wish you nothing but the best of your writing journey. I know you're all going to do great. You're all going to write amazing stories, and I cannot wait to see you all, prosper and flourish in your journey, and just rock it out. Be the rock stars that you are. And so again, guys, become a child again. Imagine, my friends, and I will see you soon. Again, such a pleasure speaking with you all again, and stay tuned for the next episode. Alrighty, bye.